Hey there, internet friends. Welcome back to the Clarion Sports Podcast. My name is Nick Suss, and I'm joined again this week by Mackenzie Salmon.
Hello, people.
We're here, and we're here to talk about Mississippi sports again. When last we spoke, we were heading into National Signing Day. National Signing Day is behind us. We are now in the heart of SEC basketball season, and at the end of this week, baseball is here. So we've got plenty of stuff to talk about later in the podcast with Ole Miss, with Mississippi State, and with Southern Miss heading into what should be a very good and productive baseball season for all three of them. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about basketball, a little bit about signing day. Let's kind of clean up our conversation from last week. So, Mackenzie, where do you want to start?
So, well, like you said, it was a very good weekend. I was at State when they played Kentucky. It was a good game in my opinion. It was very loud. A lot of fans came out. Obviously, they ended up losing by 3 points, I believe it was. For them, I think the biggest problem was getting hot late in the game. The first half, it was really hard for them. Hugh didn't make any points until the last 20 minutes of the game. Lamar Peters was kind of off. In the second half is definitely when they got jumped. The game jump-started. But I feel like moving forward, it's crazy because every State game I go to, they usually win. But when I'm not there, they're very off and on. I think they're good at home. Away, it's a different story.
Yeah, I mean, State won in Oxford when last we were here. That was an away win for them, but it's not a surprise that teams are better at home, especially a team like Mississippi State that has been doing a very good job of selling out that arena, and if not selling out, putting 10,000 fans in there for a lot of games. So it's not surprised they have a pretty good home field advantage, home court advantage at this point. But yeah, back-to-back losses for State last week aren't going to help anybody, losses, but they were against LSU and Kentucky. Those are two pretty okay teams right there. They're actually playing right now as we're recording, those two teams are. So it'll be fascinating to see who wins that game. But yeah, you got to feel for State the week they had. That's a tough week. I feel like 99% of teams in America would have lost both of those games. But it's about how you respond after a week like that.
So for Ole Miss, I mean, you were at their last game. I feel like Breein Tyree has become the leader for the team every game, it seems like. Yeah,
I mean, he scored five. He has 5 straight games where he scored 20 or more points. Against Georgia on Saturday, he put up 31, which ties his career high. He's really been shooting well. He's been shooting lights out. But I think the difference for Ole Miss against Georgia, Breein's always going to score. And if Breein's not there, TD's going to score, Devontae's going to score. Somebody on this team is going to shoot. The difference against Georgia was that this team was rebounding, and they were rebounding aggressively. They were playing well on the glass. Georgia came into that game as the leading rebounding team in the SEC. And Ole Miss out-rebounded them as the number 11 rebounding team in the SEC. That's quite a drop-off. It's impressive. You can't help but be impressed with how Ole Miss rebounded, especially a senior like Bruce Stevens to step up and have one of his best rebounding games of his career. And so, yeah, I guess the rambling point of that is Breein's going to score. Breein's going to get his points. Hard not to be impressed with what the other people did. And also just the way that team bounced back. Ole Miss had its week where it lost a couple of games the week before, but then it comes out and it beats A&M and it beats Georgia, and it seems like things might be stable. Now Mississippi State's in search of that week.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like kind of talking about tournament-bound stuff, I know you just recently wrote an article about that, answering that question. And I know, like you said in your article, coming into the preseason polls, they were ranked like last
in the SEC.
Last in the SEC. So, I mean, obviously they've been able to add stuff to their resume to prove that they don't deserve to be last. But the question, again, are they tournament-bound? What does that seem like in your opinion?
This team's got 8 games left. If it wins 4, I think it's in. If you get to that 20-win plateau in the SEC, it's going to be really hard not to get into the tournament. 2 games against Missouri, 1 more game against Georgia, 1 more game against Arkansas. Those 4 games right there should be winnable. You've already beaten Georgia, you've already beaten Arkansas, and 2 games against Missouri, which has struggled a little bit this year. You win those 4 games, you do what you're supposed to do, I think you're in. If you steal a game from Kentucky, from Tennessee, or from Auburn on Wednesday on the road, I think that even helps your cases even a little bit more. And I'm blanking on what the last team they have to play is. They've got 8 more. But yeah, if you win 4 of them, or maybe only if you win 3 of them, but one of them is against a Tennessee or a Kentucky, I think you're in. If you win 3 out of these last 8 and then win 1 or 2 in Nashville in the SEC tournament, I still think you're in. Right now, Ole Miss is going to have to do a lot to not get in. It's going to be tough because the bubble is so thin this year.
Is there a must-win game? Is there?
Kermit Davis does not believe in the concept of must-win games, and I think that's what you're setting me up for there. I think there are must-win games. I think that 100% there are games that you're supposed to win, and if you lose them, it looks bad. But Kermit's definition of a must-win game is if you lose, your season ends. So by that standard, no, I guess there isn't a true must-win game on the schedule, but I mean, it'd be really hard to stomach a loss against Georgia at home. Like, that would be really bad.
Mississippi State, speaking on their side, another one of the problems I think that this team has seen a little bit through the season is Howland utilizing the bench players. I think there's a lot of players that should be having more of that time compared to, other players that have been on there. For them, I mean, must-win games, as much as you can add to your resume and just knock those out, I feel like that's one place where I feel like you need to have these must-win games. Just get the easy ones out of the way.
I agree with you. I think that if you can win home games that are supposed to be won, that's the obvious. That's the checklist. If you can't win home games against teams with worse records than you probably aren't going to play very well in March. These are the games that, if you're saying must win doesn't necessarily have to mean the season is over, this is fire and brimstone, this is a loss. But, I mean, when you look at it, if you don't win these games, you're going to look bad. So, I don't want to say a must win, but should we say should win? These should win games for both teams are going to come and be huge during these last 3-4 weeks of the regular season, because these are both teams that have the talent and have the wins to be playing in March. But the SEC is loaded, and it's kind of been eating itself alive.
I think, I'm excited for it to get where it comes to those, quote, must-win games, because, I love this time of season for basketball. I know baseball is about to start, and that's what we're going to get done start talking about here in a second, but I can't wait to see this. It'd be so much fun if both teams were tournament bound. I mean, especially for me, since I just do both,
Which begs the question, Mackenzie, and I think this is what a lot of people listening want to know. If both teams are playing in March, what are you going to do? I'm going to go where Ole Miss is. Ty's going to go where State is. You're going to have a choice to make.
I think for me, it's going to be more that coin top or coin flip toss, and I'll go with heads.
Let's just say whoever's closer. Whichever, if State's playing in New Orleans and Ole Miss is playing in Oregon, there's an obvious choice there. But yeah, I wouldn't have expected that both of these teams would be tournament bound. I don't think anybody would have expected that both of these teams would be tournament bound. And you're looking at this, 3 of the 4 basketball teams in this state between men's and women's likely to be tournament bound, which that's pretty impressive.
I think so too. You ready to talk some baseball?
I've been waiting years and years and years for anyone to ask me that question. So yes, I'm always happy to talk about baseball. Mackenzie, start us off. Baseball.
All right, Nick. Starting up. Who do we have in the Ole Miss lineup starting pitcher? Go ahead.
Should I put on the in this corner? You want me to put on the announcer voice?
That's what I was trying to do. But no, go ahead.
On Friday nights for the Ole Miss Rebels, a right-handed junior from Georgia, Will Etheridge. I believe he went to Parkview High School. I could be wrong about that, but he is from not so far off from my neck of the woods. Yeah, your Friday night starter for Ole Miss is going to be Will Etheridge. He spent most of the last 2 years in the bullpen. He is moving into the starting rotation after, in 15 innings between the fall and spring, he posted a 0.6 ERA in 15 innings. That's fill in the blank here. That is
great.
I would have said good. Yeah, it's great. It's great. After Etheridge was kind of the mystery of what's going to happen with Ole Miss's starting rotation. The two guys behind him are both newcomers. On Saturday this week, you're going to have Zach Phillips. He's a junior college transfer from Texarkana, Texas. As Mackenzie and I learned today, he went to Texas High School, which has to be the least creative name for a high school. Not to criticize, it's probably a great high school, but to be a high school in the state of Texas called Texas High School, that's a fault of imagination, should we say?
That's the most basic name I could think of. I was thinking, if I heard of a high school named Indiana High School, I'd be like, that's not real. That's something off a movie.
Yeah. And then Sunday night, a name that some Ole Miss fans should be familiar with, and some baseball fans in general might be familiar with. The Sunday night starter for Ole Miss this year is going to be Gunnar Hoagland, or not this year, but this week, and for the foreseeable future, it'll be Gunnar Hoagland, who was a first-round pick of the Pittsburgh Pirates this year in the MLB draft. He turned down the slot value. He turned down signing his major league contract, being picked number 36 overall. To play college baseball, he will be a two-way player at Ole Miss, but right now he will be primarily a pitcher where he will start on Sundays. And that leaves Houston Roth, who a lot of us may be pegged to be the Saturday or the Sunday guy. He's going to be a bullpen and a midweek guy to start the season. Maybe things will change if Phillips or if Hoagland does not get the job done in the early going. But that's kind of what Ole Miss's pitching rotation looks like. And I can't tell you too much about what State's pitching rotation looks like. You probably know better than I did. Ethan Small is returning, I believe. He's one of the better pitchers in the SEC this year. He should have a good go of it. If Tyler was here, he would be able to tell us much more about State's rotation. But I think that when it comes to State, much like when it comes to Ole Miss, a lot of the money is going to be made with the lineup. And I know you got a chance to sit down with Chris Lemonis for a little while. You got a chance to sit down with Jake Mangum, their preseason All-American center fielder. Before we get to Ole Miss's lineup, and before we get to Southern Miss as well, because they have a very talented team, give us a little bit of your impression of what is going on in Starkville, in addition to a great team unveiling a brand new, beautiful stadium.
I know. I'm really excited to see that. I'm definitely going to be there for opening day. I'm kind of talking to Coach Lemonis. I know, and you know this, coming in as a brand new head coach, there's a lot of expectations. And he told me obviously he realizes that. But one thing that's really cool with this team this year is that they do have some senior members coming back. I think a lot of the sophomores are, set to take the next step and kind of stand up and be more confident than they were last year. I know last year when I came in, the season had already started, but I know they had a really slow start starting off. They lost to Southern Miss. But
yeah, that might be the first time in Clarion Ledger history that a coaching hire was referred to as the new dude, but I think you're referring to the stadium. If I'm being honest, the most fun I've ever had covering sports was at a Mississippi State baseball game. And it was in Baton Rouge. It was not at Duty Noble. It was regionals 2 years ago, and I'm sorry if that's bringing up poor memories for the State fans listening. But when I think of watching State baseball, I think of that sort of environment. The fans are incredibly passionate about baseball, and that's also true at Ole Miss. These are two incredibly intense fan bases. And I think it's exciting that you have two schools in the state of Mississippi, and really you have three schools in the state of Mississippi that are going to have contending baseball programs this year. All three of them, in my book, are top 25 programs. Obviously, Southern Miss has a different set of challenges playing in the conference it plays in, playing the competition it plays. It's going to have fewer chances to prove itself. But just like Ole Miss and just like Mississippi State, Southern Miss has a lot of talent. And I think at the top of that, very well might be the best first baseman in America. You want to talk about him?
Do you want to talk about it? Matt Wallner is amazing.
He's a really good baseball player. And he's actually going to be pitching a little bit this year, too, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
So yeah, there's going to be a little bit of him from a couple of different perspectives. But the best player in the state is at Southern Miss. Matt Wallner is. Yeah, you vamped for a little while. I'm going to pull up some stats and just look at what he did last year because he's an impressive player.
Mm-hmm. But the USA Today coaches poll, Ole Miss was at number 10. MSU was at number 15. Southern Miss wasn't ranked, like you said, but they were really close to being ranked. And like you said, they face a lot of different challenges being in the conference that they're in.
Yeah, to answer the mystery that I'm going to hung on you there, Matt Wallner last year batted .351, .474 on base, .618 slugging, 16 homers, 13 doubles, 48 walks. He's a freaking good baseball player. It is a bummer that fewer people are going to get to watch him because Southern Miss isn't as televised as some of the others. But yeah, I mean, Southern Miss has the most fascinating matchup to open the season. They're playing Purdue, hosting Purdue, if I'm not mistaken, down in Hattiesburg. Wright State was a tournament team last year. So, Ole Miss is starting with the tournament team. And who does Mississippi State play? Remind me. I'm blanking on their opponent.
I'm thinking of Wright State, but I know that's Ole Miss. They play... Back to Matt Wallner while I'm looking this up for a second. This kid is crazy. I remember I was setting up to go interview him, and he got drafted by the Twins in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's so good. So State, they play Youngstown State.
Youngstown.
Friday. I blanked.
Oh, how dare you forget Youngstown State.
Yeah.
These are three pretty interesting matchups. Ole Miss has a lot to prove because it's a brand new pitching rotation. You have three brand new starting pitchers. State has a little bit to prove because it's a brand new coaching staff. And Southern always has something to prove because that's Southern's identity. They are the team that has to prove stuff. But you brought up the coaches poll, which didn't have Southern in it. I'm pretty sure that there are a couple of polls that do. Mm-hmm. Let me pull them up because I have a list of all of the rankings right here. So, in the D1 baseball rankings, Ole Miss is number 10, Mississippi State is number 14, Southern is unranked. In the National College Baseball, I think this is College Baseball newspaper, Mississippi State's number 13, Southern Miss is number 26, Ole Miss, misspelled, is number 11. That is Ole Miss, like Les Mis, except
Les Mis, but
Ole. Yeah, that's a typo. But yeah, 11, 13, and 26 in the NCBWA poll. Collegiate baseball poll. Ole Miss is number 11. Mississippi State is number 27. Southern Miss is number 30. In the Baseball America poll, Mississippi State's number 9. Ole Miss is number 13. Southern Miss is number 21. So yeah, there are a lot of polls that have all three teams. I believe that was the only one that had State ahead of Ole Miss. Generally, Ole Miss is at the top. But the point being, State's coming off of an Omaha run. Ole Miss is coming off of a year as a national seed. Southern is coming off of multiple Conference USA championships and almost certainly going to win another one this year, which puts you in the postseason. A lot of good baseball in this state. Mackenzie, you know I'm a big baseball fan. You know this is the sort of thing I geek out about. Let's just get to your question. What do you want to ask me? I want to talk about baseball forever.
All right, my question for you, Nick. I love baseball too. What, in your opinion, is going to be the funnest series that you're like legit looking forward to covering?
Oh, that I'm looking forward to covering. Oh gosh, early in the season, Ole Miss plays, I think, 2 games at Louisville, and that could be a lot of fun. I don't know if I will be there because Louisville's a bit of a hike from here, but that should be a lot of fun. And then you always have to circle a couple of games on the schedule this year because the SEC is loaded. There are 8 SEC teams in the top 25 of nearly every poll. So if you just go through Ole Miss's schedule, you have Louisville's preseason number 4? Is that right? Where's Louisville? They're number 11 in Baseball America. Yeah, they're number 4 in the D1 baseball poll. That's a really good series, Tuesday, Wednesday series out in Louisville. But if you look at some of the SEC opponents this year, Ole Miss has to go to Arkansas. That's a top 15 team right there. They host Florida, which
this year
is a great series, and I am not positive I will be here because I think No, it's the same weekend as the spring game, if I'm not mistaken. So if you're coming into town for the spring football game, Ole Miss will also be hosting a top 10 opponent in Florida. Then they host Kentucky, then at Auburn, who's another top 15 opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the midweeker against State in Pearl. Then you host Texas A&M, which is another top 30 matchup. Then a midweek against Southern Miss. Then you go to number 1 LSU. Then you get a midweek off and then host State. So that is a stretch of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 straight games in April and early May against teams currently ranked in the top 30. It's not an easy schedule, man. And let's just put it this way: they don't play Vanderbilt this year, and Vanderbilt's the preseason number 1 or 2 team in every single poll. LSU and Vandy are 1-2. Ole Miss doesn't get Vandy this year, and the schedule is still that loaded.
Let me see if Mississippi State is Vandy. I don't think they play Vandy this year.
It's hard. I mean, if you luck out, you luck out. Ole Miss still has to play Florida. I mean, you still have to play Florida out of the East. You still have to play Kentucky out of the East. You still have to play Missouri's a little bit of an easier track out of the East. But and then you look in a midweek, they have East Carolina, who's a top 15 team. I mentioned the Louisville games in the midweek. They have weekend series at Tulane versus Long Beach State. This is a tough schedule. This is a really tough schedule, and that's not a surprise to me. Ole Miss always plays a tough schedule, but man, this is going to be a lot of fun to watch. You've got Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, State, A&M all coming to town this year in a road trip to Baton Rouge, which I will be kicking myself if I am not at that series in Baton Rouge. But man, oh man, what'd you get? Let's go through State's schedule. What'd you find?
So, State schedule. Last year, obviously, State hosted Florida. That was a great series. They ended up winning. They go to Gainesville this time. I think that'll be, obviously, a great series. Southern Miss will be at Starkville. Let's see here. Auburn, they host Auburn. LSU, they host LSU. That'll be huge.
That'll be really big.
Tennessee is going to be in Knoxville, obviously. Bama, Starkville. Arkansas is in Fayetteville, so that one might be...
Can you say that again?
Fayetteville.
Fayetteville.
That's Indiana, I'm sorry. And then, of course, Ole Miss will be in Oxford when they play them later in May. I mean, this is a pretty stacked schedule, too. They got South Carolina, then SEC tournament, and then regionals and super regionals. This will be... Fayetteville.
Like here's the easy way to remember.
Like
where
Louisville.
Where we are recording right now is Lafayette County, not Lafayette County.
Oh.
So Fayetteville, not Fayette.
Not Lafayette?
No, it's Lafayette County.
Lafayette?
Yeah, more you know, Mississippi. Pronouncing things the way that the rest of the world doesn't. And then I've got Southern Miss's schedule. We mentioned the Purdue series to open. So we mentioned the Purdue series at the top. They play Purdue this weekend. Then you go to Starkville. You host Gonzaga. You host Holy Cross at Louisiana Tech. Then you get into Conference USA schedule, which obviously includes Louisiana Tech. Your midweekers, you've got games against Ole Miss. You've got games against Louisiana Lafayette, which is generally a pretty good program. Rice might be on the rebound. They're in their first year after... I believe Wayne Graham has finally stepped down after approximately 930 years as the coach in college baseball. It's an easier schedule for Southern Miss, but Southern Miss very easily could win 35-40 games this year, which hard to not be impressed with. Mm-hmm. And that's a pretty good rundown of what these teams have gotten. Mackenzie, as we start rounding this thing down, what about baseball gets you the most excited?
Honestly, for me, why are you laughing?
Because I'm really excited.
I'm excited because a lot of times in games when I go to cover a series, 3 games, no one really wants to see, post-game video of just, this is what happened. I love talking to the fans during these games. And like you said, when being in Starkville, when I covered games there, the fans were the funnest in the left field lounge. For me, I just love going around interviewing people, talking to them, why they like coming to baseball. Because I remember last year when I went to state, it was my first time covering baseball in Mississippi, and I'm at Hobie Hobart in Left Field Lounge. It was a great experience. But while you were laughing at me, what's your favorite part about baseball?
So just to let you guys in on how much of a geek I am and why Mackenzie's laughing at me right now, yesterday, so Monday when we were recording this, I engaged in my yearly tradition, and it's one of my favorite days of the year, of going and buying new scorebooks. I don't know if when you guys are watching baseball you keep score by hand, but in addition to me keeping score by hand, I have kept every scorecard from every game I have ever covered, professional or college baseball. And Mackenzie was just laughing at me because I was going to my desk and retrieving. What I have in front of me is a stack approximately 4 inches high of loose leaf paper and random scorebooks of every baseball game I have ever covered. And it's organized, and it's alphabetized, and it's timeline, and I love it. And feel free to go through this, Mackenzie, if you ever want to. There's some gems in here. There's some great baseball games. You got this book right here. This one was way too small. I kept a score backwards in here, but it worked. These ones, this is the brand I usually use now. Last year, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see what I kept track of in here.
Oh, this is small.
That's a small book right there. It didn't work, but I made it work. If you can look here, you can tell, Mackenzie, that there are approximately 90 tally marks at the top of this book. Identify for them, about 90 tally marks. I kept track of every single time that LSU's baseball park played the song Callin' Baton Rouge by Garth Brooks for an entire season. The answer, I believe, was 87. I love scorebooks. I love baseball. These are the artifacts of history I have right here, and I am super geeky about it, and Mackenzie's rolling her eyes at me.
No. Question. Is keeping score in a scorebook like we do a lost art? Would you say yes?
A little. I don't know if it's a lost art among media members, but I do think that there is something to be said of being able to flip to a random page. Let's see what game I have here. This is a LSU-Alabama game from last year, and as you can tell, there was an inning in the 8th inning where where LSU batted around, and I had to use extra. It's just so awesome to be able to tell this from one look and be like, dang, that was a good inning, and that was a good game. And I love this, and if you can't tell by the timbre of my voice, I'm getting myself way too excited, and we should probably stop this before I start screaming about the intricacies of how to keep score, because it makes me happy.
Okay, 5 seconds of fun. Or 5 minutes of fun.
Okay.
Not 5 seconds. 5 minutes of fun. Anything going on in your world? Last time on this podcast, I brought up a really cool tweet. Is there anything going on that you've been wanting to talk about or you think is relevant to the topics?
Well, we didn't talk about recruiting. There was some... You were there. I want to ask you about this. Jerry O'Neilly, you were there. The catching the gold glitter football, was that cool? Because watching it on TV and watching your stream, it seemed like a much ado about nothing.
Yeah, so it was kind of awkward because we being there, we kind of knew what was going to happen. They had told us before ESPN was ready to go live. They said, Coach Ricky Black's going to throw this football, Jerry O'Neilly's going to catch it and pull the hat out of it and say what school he chose. And we asked him after the fact, we're like, so what made you guys decide to do this? And he was like, oh, it's just something different. So I guess they just did it last minute. Coach Black and his wife decorated the football, split it in half, and made sure they shoved the hat in it.
So I don't know if this is how you thought of it, but I watched it and it made me think of Willy Wonka and the golden eggs, and I just couldn't get the image of Veruca Salt out of my head. And that's not what you should be thinking about when a 5-star running back, one of the best athletes in all of high school and all of America, is making one of the biggest decisions of his life. And I was just sitting there, but Daddy, I want a golden goose. That's all I was thinking. And not to say it wasn't a cool decision. It was awesome. Good for him to make his choice. But you were there. You saw it from the front row. I was watching your stream. You can dab. Go ahead. Nobody can see you. Go ahead and dab. I just couldn't wrap my head around there are a lot of really cool ways to announce it. Also, I'm impressed the hat fit in that hollowed out football.
Yeah, they like bunched it up in a big ball, and like I was surprised too when they shoved it in there because I was hoping that when he caught the football, he just ripped off the glitter and it would have like the name of the school on it. But he took a hat out and did the whole ordeal. It was kind of cool. It was precious because Coach Black did it, and if you know Ricky Black, he's not an arts and crafts kind of guy. Now that you mentioned the Willy Wonka, yeah, that's definitely Willy Wonka. Now that I think of it.
Are you a Willy Wonka fan?
Yes, and I know you'll probably judge me, but I like the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka.
Well, that movie's called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But it was like Willy Wonka and his little...
Yeah, no, they just have different titles because the Johnny Depp one has the same title as the book, but the Gene Wilder one is called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and it's better. It's better. I'm sorry, it's better.
Potatoes, sir. Coke, pop, soda. That's another thing.
Mackenzie, don't get people to yell at you. You've already been yelled at well enough for correctly pointing out that you can say all of them. But yeah, if you want to go yell at Mackenzie on Twitter, she's at Mackenzie Salmon, and she put some controversial takes out there about what you call fizzy brown drinks. I personally call it a soda. She calls it a pop. We're both right. Who cares?
Well, with that, Nick, do you have anything else you want to say?
I'm good.
If you guys want to follow Nick, you can do so on Twitter. Nick Sus. Always Sus.
Spelled like it sounds.
Spelled like it sounds. We hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. We always have fun the past 2 times making them. But yeah, like we said, if you guys want to follow us, you can do so on Twitter. You can read Nick's articles, watch my videos. But until next time, we'll see you.